Spanish language (RW). If after years of Spanish classes, some people still find it impossible to understand some native speakers, they should not worry. This does not necessarily mean the lessons were wasted. Millions of Spanish speakers use neither standard Latin American Spanish nor Castilian, which predominate in U.S. schools. The confusion is partly political. The Spanish-speaking world is very diverse. Spanish is the language of 19 separate countries and Puerto Rico. This means that there is no one standard dialect. The most common Spanish dialect taught in the U.S. is Standard Latin American. It is sometimes called Highland Spanish since it is generally spoken in the mountainous areas of Latin America. While each country retains its own accents and has some unique vocabulary, residents of countries such as Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia generally speak Latin American Spanish, especially in urban centers. This dialect is noted for its pronunciation of each letter and its strong R sounds. This Spanish was spoken in Spain in the 16th and 17th centuries and was brought to the Americas by the early colonists. However, the Spanish of Madrid and of northern Spain, called Castilian, developed characteristics that never reached the New World.
For centuries, boys were top of the class. But these days, that's no longer the case. A new study by the OECD, a club of mostly rich countries, examined how 15-year-old boys and girls performed at reading, mathematics, and science. Boys still score somewhat better at maths, and in science the genders are roughly equal. But when it comes to the students who really struggle, the difference is stark. Boys are 50% more likely than girls to fall short of basic standards in all three areas. Researchers suggest that doing homework set by teachers is linked to better performance in maths, reading, and science. Boys, it appears, spend more of their free time in the virtual world. They are 17% more likely than girls to play collaborative online games than girls every day. They also use the internet more. Third, peer pressure plays a role. A lot of boys decide early on that they are just too cool for school, which means they're more likely to be rowdy in class. Teachers mark them down for this. In anonymous tests, boys perform better. In fact, the gender gap in reading drops by a third when teachers don't know the gender of the pupil they are marking. So what can be done to close this gap? Getting boys to do more homework and cut down on screen time would help. But most of all, abandoning gender stereotypes would benefit all students. Boys in countries with the best schools read much better than girls. And girls in Shanghai excel in mathematics. They outperform boys from anywhere else in the world. Over the last few years, incorporating mindfulness applications in school environments has attracted interest, and several research studies have been conducted to evaluate the effects of mindfulness on learners' well-being and academic performance. Since teachers are the frontline implementers, they must be used in assessing the effectiveness of these tools. These views provide useful insights on how these applications affect the classroom, student conduct and academic achievement. A brief assessment of the views of teachers shows that they have a favorable attitude towards the applications of mindfulness. Teachers note that all of these tools enhance students' emotional self-awareness and ability to handle stress. According to the American Psychological Association (APA) poll in 2021, 76% of teachers reported that their students' anxiety and stress reduced when using mindfulness applications regularly. This reduction in stress not only assists in improving the overall climate of the classroom, but also helps in improving students' abilities to complete tasks that are academically related.
Last, Kuahoga is finally taking it a bit further in suggesting that mindfulness practices can involve group practices that help students develop empathy amongst each other. For instance, the case study in which the students perform their exercises in class can facilitate a shared experience and construct rapport and a better classroom experience. The connectedness feeling increases positive feeling and helps to build up a positive learning climate and cooperation. According to SDT, these three psychological needs provide a broad perspective of how mindfulness will produce different positive outcomes in an education setting. Teachers who are aware that mindfulness practice has no conflict with the principle of SDT will perceive these intercessions more like a useful intervention and will make greater use of them in their classrooms. This theoretical context also provides for the advantage of application of mindfulness to have on student health and performance, along with outlining those most effective strategies for such use.
Sometimes ignorance is preferable to the detailed truth. Maybe we only care about truth insofar as it empowers us. Knowing and thinking about all of the details of every orange tree would just be a psychological burden for the most of us. I'll take illusion over the reality. But I can't help but ask, is it possible that the mind is actually accessing a deeper kind of truth? Maybe the mind is separating the signal from the noise. But what constitutes signal versus noise? Our values. A farmer that values knowing all the details of an orange tree will view it differently than a regular person. Well, where do our values come from? Here's Nietzsche's view from Beyond Good and Evil. Behind all logic and its seeming sovereignty of movement, there too stand valuations, or more clearly, physiological demands for the preservation of a certain type of life. For Nietzsche, our values come from our physiological demands. And what does our physiology demand? Power. It wants to survive and thrive. What does it mean to thrive? To imagine the world a certain way and to be able to make that illusion a reality. Someone could try to contest this idea by saying that they don't seek power or want to thrive. They won't eat or drink anything to prove this point. But they would still be seeking a kind of power. They imagine a world in which they prove the idea wrong, and they seek to bring that world into fruition, even at their own expense.